Max, and welcome everybody. So good to see you all. We are slowly wrapping up, getting to the end of our training of our course. Today is the 9th session. It's on landscape action plan. I think it's a really interesting session because it brings everything together that we've looked at. So you start with, bringing everybody together, developing the shared vision. What are the objectives? And then how are we actually going to plan to reach our objectives? So I find I'm a planner, so I find the landscape action planning topic really exciting. And I'm really happy that Max is here today with us because he's such a great facilitator. I think this is going to be a really interesting and engaging session. So just to go over the rules and roles for a welcoming environment. Thank you to everyone who has their screens turned on. It's so much nicer when we can see each other, we can engage more, we can interact more. As always, if your internet isn't working or if it's noisy, maybe find a quiet place with a better internet connection so that you could participate more fully. Remember to keep yourself on mute unless you're speaking, and we encourage you to interact as much as possible. Raise your hand, type in the chat box, use the reaction buttons. We really want you to be engaged in the training. And a reminder to me as well to speak slowly because not everybody has the first language. Does anybody else have suggested rules and roles for our learning space today? All right, I'll move on. So you already know me and Max from the other sessions. No need to introduce ourselves again. So I'll jump straight into the session objectives. So as I mentioned, today the class is on landscape action plans. We're going to understand what landscape action plans are, why they're important for landscape action, why they're foundational for everything that's happening in a landscape, how they can help you plan and organize and coordinate your action on the ground. And we're also going to look at some tools that can be used for developing landscape action plans. Max is also going to show some case studies that are going to be pretty good as a reference for us to understand what they are. So I thought just to get us started, and some of the last classes, it's been nice for us to start with a warm-up activity to switch our cameras off. Switch the screen share off, be back in the same room and start talking. So I'm going to ask Max to put everything on mute. And a reminder to please keep yourselves on mute if you're not speaking. So Max, could you please turn the camera off? Stop screen sharing, and I'm going to post these questions in the chat box. But just as a warm up, hi Charlotte. I see Charlotte just joined as well.
Hi everyone.
Hi. I'm going to post these questions in the chat box. But I thought just to get started, I wanted to ask, how did the homework go? Did you do it? Did you struggle with it? Was there anything you thought was particularly interesting? What were your main takeaways from the finance sessions? So I'll open the mic and everybody's welcome to chime in. Let's start with the homework. Did anybody take a stab at the homework? So as a reminder, the homework was asking you to try to identify enabling and asset investments in your landscape, or trying to identify ongoing activities and projects in your landscape that you could, or identifying funding sources that could be accessed for your objectives. Did anybody take a stab at that? I don't see any hands up. I know the finance sessions were a little bit challenging. The concepts were kind of complicated. Maybe let's switch to a different question. What were your main takeaways from the finance sessions? Anybody?
Don't be shy.
Very quiet group today.
I know Raul participated a lot, so probably he have some interesting ideas to share with us. Always really nice comments, Raul.
Good morning, everybody. I was trying to keep up the conversation alive, but anyway, to me, it's still a rough topic, to be honest, because we talk about two different kind of financing. From my point of view, one is the one that we can use from our own resources, little strategic resources, like Mariela usually says. And we can try to put like a facilitator, like we do as a Ricoto, try to put everyone together and get everyone in one room to do all kind of work, especially regarding the mapping of actors, the planning, and the short-term, mid-term goals. But to do a really impact in the landscape, I think we need to have really um, another finance strategy, like Max was saying before, because we cannot rely on in whatever small amount that everyone in the stakeholder platform has. So for that, we need to get together and create a plan, a finance strategy where, as a group, we could apply to different funds from different resources or different sources. So for me, it's still challenging in the sense that as a platform, everybody has their own goals, but individually, but at the same time, we have a main goal, which is to maintain the sustainability of the landscape, using the resources in a appropriate way, but at the same time, we need to find ways to do that kind of money. At some point, Max was talking about different money coming from different ways, especially like, for example, if you have money and come from grants, from investments, from the New York Stock Exchange, for example, whatever you have invested in. But to me, it's hard to place it in a moment where the donors are still requiring a lot of has a lot of requirements for us to apply. So in theory, I understand. In the practice, I think it's a little bit challenging, at least for me.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a really I appreciate your honesty, Raul. I think it is a challenging topic for a lot of people, and but I do think it connects very nicely with this session because the today we're going to be looking more specifically about how to develop those goals and objectives before you get to the financing, you need to it happens in parallel really, but you need to identify the goals and the objectives and the specific projects that you want to invest in so that you can look for the investment. So it's all kind of, it's a chicken and egg situation. So I'm glad we're doing this today. Mariela.
Yeah. Oh, well, I have begun to coordinate with my colleagues here in Peru, taking into account the model forest of Pichanaki. So I was coordinating with Omar Buendia. So because also as a Ricolto, we are thinking of strengthening our work there. So knowing how is the governance of the model forest, the occurring links, and thus we want to strengthen, considering, of course, the resources and expertise that every stakeholder can contribute. So our intention, because now we are starting, we are talking now. Our intention is that is to make more evident some key elements, such as the government involvement, the power of the cooperative. No, one of the most important cooperative in the area is our partners. So we are talking about our productive and commercial organizations participation, as well as the participation of young people now from the university. And that is really key, because the youth participation is or means sustainability now. So we are starting to think about that, making maybe like a list of stakeholders, but also the expertise and the different kind of resources that everyone can contribute.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Anybody else? Main takeaways from the finance session, or questions about the finance sessions, or comments? Even if it's just to say, I didn't get that, that was very confusing.
Hi, Patricia.
Hi.
Unfortunately, I was not in the first two sessions, but maybe I can air out my ideas as far as financing is concerned. I think from the landscape perspective, see, something like what can we call it? Integrated financing or blended financing could also be important to bring in different financiers, be it from the government end, from the investors' ends, or any other donors financing to finance the functioning and governance of the landscape, or to invest on a specific project. Yeah.
That's perfect. I feel like you've participated in many of the finance sessions already with Seth and Juan, because you just captured exactly what they say. You even have the jargon down to a T. So it sounds like you're very advanced in the, at least conceptually, in the landscape finance theory. So that's great. Congratulations. Charlotte?
Yeah, thank you, Patricia. And nice to see that there's a few more colleagues in today. Yeah, I just wanted to flag a post that I shared in our internal Teams chat last week, because there were these really interesting resources about how to involve also private sector in these discussions around landscape. And what are some of the kind of rules of engagement, things to take into consideration, and how can we also kind of showcase the value that investing in the sourcing landscape has for them. Just wanted to point this out. So if you go into the Teams channel of the ILM group, then you'll find this, and they're not very long. I think they're 5 or 6 pages each, they're like a series of policy brief, but they're really full of really nice insights on how to work with private sector to get the funding to do this work. So not only for the value chain work itself, but also for the kind of convening, gathering, bringing people together in a multi-stakeholder kind of landscape partnership. So that's also one of the points that we briefly touched upon last session. I thought it was really fascinating, but also very challenging. So, and definitely something that, as part of our approach of ILM at Ricoto, we should definitely consider. So back to you, Patricia.
Yeah, thank you so much. Charlotte, I would love to take a look at those as well, if you could share them with our group as well. And I'd be happy to send them in the follow-up email. Yes, that's exactly what we're looking for. It's thinking about who the different stakeholders are and what each of them can add to the table, really, especially through a financing lens.
And just to add to that, Patricia, and I think it's nice that Charlotte bring this out, because it's very, sometimes it's like more challenging to find resources to fund the platform, the multi-stakeholder platform, the partnership, than funding projects. So normally the donors want like very specific work with I don't know, conservation of something, production of something, other than funding governance, funding meetings. So interesting, Charlotte. I would really like to also take a look at this document. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else have any final comments?
Yeah, I think with private sectors, as long as there's a business case for them, they would be interested to come on it. I'm working in a different area, not really implementing the integrated landscape, but you could see when you go along in the journey with private sectors, once they see the business case for them, they are ready to invest on it because it add value in their vision and mission.
Right. Yeah, that's really interesting because there's a lot of the work is finding a way to communicate with them that they understand what you're doing and they see a value for them in the partnership, right? In the landscape work. Communication is really important. Thanks, Jello. Well, thanks everyone for sharing. This was oh, and thanks Charlotte for posting the documents. And I think we should pass this over. Oh, so I'm going to jump straight into the pre-test. I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes to complete the pre-test. Just a couple of minutes so that we can move along quickly into the content. But I think it's also going to prime you for the content that Max is going to share. So I just posted the link to the pre-test in the chat box, and I'll just start a 2-minute timer now.
Thanks, Charlotte. I see the link here. Yeah, it's from ICO. We were just discussing this ICO documents like yesterday or before. There are some other new, I've seen this one is from 2022, and there are some new interesting ones that just got out from this platform.
But just 1 more minute. And we have 9 responses already. Max, and so after the assessment now we'll pass it straight back to you and you can start with the content. We'll start with slide 9, I believe, right?
Yeah.
All right, time's up for the pretest. Thanks very much for everyone who completed it, and I'm handing it over now to Max.
Just confirm to me that you can see the presentation, my screen, and you can hear me well.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so let's get started. First of all, everyone, it's always a pleasure to be here with you, to share, to learn about all these landscape management topics. So thank you very much for the opportunity again. So to start the session, I would just like to come back and have an overview of what we've been working with. I'm gonna turn on the laser pointer that I've learned that I have. Look how nice it is. So we've been working through all these months and different sessions around these 5 elements of ILM, right? And we've started in the landscape partnership, shared understanding, and now we are working with vision and planning element. We've passed through different topics. We discussed quickly shared vision. We've talked about finance strategy. We didn't have a specific session. We didn't have any specific session on landscape strategy, but today I'd like also to talk a little bit about it with the action plan topic. Okay, so to start the conversation, and again, we would like to keep on warming up this group. I'd like to ask you guys, what do you think action planning means in the context of landscapes? Okay, so I don't know, Patricia, if you can share the question on the Mentimeter, the link, and I will share because I can, or maybe I can have it here. See if you can open this link on the chat, please, and I will try to work here. So the idea is that you can write in a few words in a sentence, what do you understand? What do you think action planning means in the landscape context? And I'll give you, just like Patricia, like dictator, 2 minutes to write down what is your understanding about it. So just let me know if you have any problems with the link. Nice. I see that we have our first responses here. What do you think action planning means in the landscape context? Planning action, different projects in a landscape in a coordinated way. Organize activities, sharing responsibilities, nice, between different actors, concrete actions, negotiation process, great. Actions that are related to the fulfillment of specific objectives. Nice. Activities, timeline, and responsibility. Okay, here we have 2 more. You guys can see my screen, right? I would love that everybody could see what is going on. A lot of ideas. There must be common understanding with actions that are important for the majority of the group. Approach to put ideas into actions, working together to achieve the objectives, planning for landscape. Okay, that's great. Understanding the context and dynamics, considering the actors involved, budget and thinking on budget and time frame. That's great. Maybe I'd like to ask some of you to just comment on what you just wrote. But I will start picking who wrote this part, approach to put ideas into actions. Let's see if we have the author of this.
I'm the one to blame for.
It's how again?
Yes.
Nice. Okay, that was
Sorry.
lucky.
That's me. Yeah, I was thinking it's more than a methodology, is a way to do it and to get into actions all the ideas as a group. I was thinking in that sense, it's not like a specific methodology that we have to implement, but it's
Great.
an approach, a way to do things that
Mhm.
brings everyone together to a common goal.
That's perfect. Thank you so much, How I think you're right. We're not talking about the methodology, definitely, and we will discuss this right now. I would like to just have someone else, thanks, How, who said sharing responsibilities between different actors. Let's see.
I think it was me.
Okay. I'm just picking those who already. Nice, Charlotte, but if you can just comment a little bit on that, it would be great.
Yeah, I feel like what's different between a regular kind of organizational action plan and an action plan in the landscape context is that you're not just, generating a plan of what you will do individually as an organization, but really what you will all do. So really identifying based on the strengths and expertise of each actor, how each one of them can contribute to implementing the vision that they've collectively developed. So really, saying, okay, that organization is really good with everything that comes with like water management, then maybe, all the activities related to, I don't know, like raising awareness around water management or, promoting sustainable water management practices might be connected to that actor. Another one that, has more expertise, I don't know, on a different issue would do it. That's how I saw it, really.
Nice. No, that's great. Thank you so much, Charlotte. And definitely it's pretty much that way. And finally, just one more here. Let's see if I pick someone new roles and responsibilities. That's more or less what Charlotte mentioned, but here it mentions also short or medium term plan resources. Who wrote that?
That is mine.
Oh, I mean, that's incredible. Okay. Mariela, nice. Please.
Yeah, well, for me, the planning is interesting because you try to organize the different resources in the different stakeholders. Yeah, yeah, and or taking into account their responsibilities, their expertise, their resources. So I was wondering if I can talk about short or medium term. So
Mhm.
I don't know. I think depend. Um, yeah, but for me, it's also important because you need to realize your resources and who is responsible for what. No,
That's perfect.
so that is. Back to you.
No, that's perfect. Thank you so much, Mariela. Thank you very much. Patricia, I think, well, that was it. The session's done. They already know everything. Thank you, everybody.
They know everything. I checked the survey as well. All the answers are correct, the pretest.
No, okay. No, okay. No, it's great. It's great. No, thank you. Of course, we enjoy a lot that you guys shared your perspectives, and I think a lot of things that you've presented, we're going to discuss here, and definitely this is the way. So yeah, let's start a little bit of this discussion with some what, why, and who, and which definitely talks directly with what you just wrote. So when we're talking about an action plan for the landscape, what do we mean, right? Firstly, I think an action plan is definitely a work plan. We're trying to organize the work on the landscape from the different stakeholders. So in this sense, it's not different from any other action plan that can be thought of from an organizational perspective or even an individual perspective. You are organizing your work. But an action plan, and this was mentioned from many of you, specifies really the steps, the actions, and someone here also wrote the word projects, and the time to approach the strategic goals. So I would really like you guys to already keep attention to this strategic goals because we are working on a cascade of different levels of goals and tasks in here. It was nice because someone or some people already wrote this the about this strategic goals or the vision that we have. As Mariela said, an action plan focuses on a short or medium time scale, different than other planning processes. And it is a foundation, or I was thinking yesterday, like they're really the building blocks of what is happening in the landscape, the actions in terms of a long-term action. So we are really doing the foundation for a long-term process. Finally, and also I think this we've just discussed before, and also Mariela mentioned when she talked about resources, what we have, what we don't have. In the action planning process, you also consider how to finance short-term objectives through different sources and instruments. Also, this Raul commented before. And finally, It focuses a lot on partnership building, on the roles, on the responsibilities, on how to keep that movement, and look for quick wins in terms of, yeah, things that we can really accomplish in this short time scale. So why should we be thinking on an action plan? First, as mentioned, it drives progress forward in the landscape. So it's really what it's gonna make the landscape move ahead, you know, uh, because we're talking about action in the field. Uh, it plans actions, steps in finance. Here, it clarifies roles of stakeholders, both in the landscape partnership. So what are the roles that people have in this platform of governance, but also the roles of stakeholders in terms of how they will contribute to this view, to this strategy of the landscape. So how are they going to contribute in terms of, practical work, changing their practices, or even funding? Um, it helps a lot on identifying the gaps and new opportunities. So where we don't have work being done and where are the other opportunities? It evaluates measurable actions. So um, as you guys probably have an idea about, the action plan is always connected to the monitoring processes. You think of actions, you directly can think of indicators of measurable, how do you say this in English? Well, measurable aspects of these indicators and so on. And then you celebrate short-term progresses and build trust, essential for success. So these two last topics are really important because they really is what the action plan and the action being implemented are what really builds a sense of pertaining and advancement with the group. Okay, so who creates and who facilitates action plans? And here there's not, like, I want you to understand that everything that I'm mentioning is not like a recipe, is not the rule, is not a methodology that it has to be exactly like this. In each context is very flexible. But in the action plans, as in the landscape partnership, you have a leader, you have a facilitator of this process, and you have all these roles who are participating on the planning process, from the leader to the supporter to the evaluator to the investor. It's always interesting to have different minds on the action plans, because sometimes those who have the technical input, who knows technically what is going on the landscape, in terms of a specific topic, maybe he's not the adequate person to facilitate the process of a session, or even not the person who will know best how to finance it. So it's important to have all of this, and we can never forget to have the key stakeholders, the organizations, the initiatives that are going on there, the businesses who have contributed to the shared vision. So as we will see, the action plan is connected to the shared vision. And uh, many of them, most of the times, these key stakeholders that have names of organizations and stuff, they already fulfill these roles in the landscape platform. And finally, the action plan, it's already the moment where you will start planning for diversity, for inclusion, and thinking to address power dynamics to create equitable solutions. Okay, so in this context, this session is not something completely new. We are actually connecting some previous discussions and topics from this process that we've been So the action planning, as we talked about, it's a short to medium term planning process. You're planning for things that are going not so long, 1 to 5 years. It will depend a lot on like who you're talking with. It will say, oh no, an action plan, it is just for 1 year, like an annual operative plan, or 1 to 2, 3. And others will say like, oh no, it's 1 to 4. This is like not strict, but it really aims into practical results. But before diving into what the action plan talks about, I really want to see how is the context of the action plan. So if you guys remember the wheel of the 5 elements, the second element, after you work the landscape partnership, you have what we call the shared understanding. So it's necessary to build an action plan. First of all, you need to understand your context very well. You need to know your situation, what are the problems, what are the challenges, needs, the causes that are really driving the landscape at some point, right? So in this moment, you is and in many documents and many literatures and methods, they start the action planning saying, oh, you need the context analysis, and definitely you need it. But here we see it at a first point, and it is what will feed into the shared vision. Okay, so we've seen the shared vision as a generational time frame. We're talking about really time that is around like 20 years, a generational term that you want to see real structural changes. But it works on a concept and in a conceptual, more general perspective. So when you're talking about the shared vision, you may be talking about concepts like, oh, improved well-being, healthy nature, regenerative economy, inspiring a collective action. So here you don't have much detail in the shared vision, but these concepts will then feed the landscape strategy. That is a more long-term planning process. Okay, so we're not talking about 1 to 5 years. Some will say like, okay, the strategy should have at least 5 years and could be 7, 10, 15 years people would make strategies for. But this strategy already starts to lower or to land this conceptual ideas of the shared vision into more concrete goals. And when we say concrete goals, we're really talking about things that you can more concretely say that you want to happen in the landscape. So, but they are still very like uh, more complex, more complicated, needs more time and work. Like, oh, I want universal primary school for all in the landscape or for all the indigenous people who are in the landscape. I want diversified livelihoods by this year. I want all the forests connected, rivers flowing year all round by these dates, new markets established for sustainably produced crops, increased civic participation and governance. So these are more concrete goals instead of like this generalistic concepts, but they are not yet things that you can so easily put into practice. Not that it will be easy at any point, but it will make it easier for you to lower and land it to a more action plan. So an action planning as a short, medium term looks for more practical results, like what we do on projects. You can have more complex, large projects, but you can have really focused projects more in terms of actions. So like a number of schools being built, a number of farmers being trained, process of restoration and protection in specific areas uh, 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 you've prioritized for connectivity, but maybe not all of the forest connected. You can do market scoping, studies to understand the market as a starting point for the new market established that you want to see in the next 15 years. And if you're talking about governance, participation, you can work and have a project on a series of meetings for, discussing a topic or another, or facilitating or having trainings on governance processes. And finally, so here's the action planning process. And finally, you also have like kind of the level that is the most, well, you can always have even more and more detailed levels of planning, but below this kind of series of projects that you've detected, you can still do the project design, the project planning. So what are the specific steps and tasks from each project, the logical framework, and etc. So just as a summary, you're coming from a general perspective of general perspective of planning to a more concrete thing, and finally to something very practical. And in the end, this, and someone talked about that, this is what in the end will be your project portfolio, both on things that you have, that you're already doing, and things that you want to do. And this will be the process where you will see each stakeholder in the process will say, oh, wait, I can work on this project. I think I can have a way to manage it or find funding for it, or maybe I can't do this project the way it is, but I can start working within my scope of work. So more or less, this is the idea, and it is important to understand that each of these topics, concept, goals, and projects, you during this process of strategy and planning, you'll try to perceive what are the synergies and the trade-offs that may exist between these projects and these goals. So some key aspects that I would like to highlight at this point are, for example, in action planning, if you're doing a planning process, an action planning process, it definitely has to be connected to the shared, to the strategy and the vision, as we've seen above, and finally to the context. As I mentioned, in many of the literature of action planning, of planning of whatever it is, you start understanding the context with a problem tree. I will present it later, but you will have to understand what is the situation. Then it's important also to do initial stock taking of the actual projects, businesses, and programs. So besides doing a stakeholder mapping, as we had in the previous sessions, it is interesting to have a mapping of the actual work and actions that you already have on the landscape. So you definitely have people, NGOs who already is working on some projects. You have businesses that have their business plans, the way they work. You have some governmental programs. So it's interesting to understand this and start discussing and prioritizing what you want to do. So someone talked about negotiation, right? It's really a process also of discussing and trying to find out what is the priority based on the vision, the strategy. So you need really in the participatory process to align it's a process of alignment, coordination, and integration of these different actions, and really considering existing mandates, programs, and business plans. So considering what you already have in terms of actions, should you expand these actions that are already going on? Should you link them with other actions that are already going on, or you were gonna do new actions? So really, it's a prioritization process, uh, but in the same time, that is a prioritization process. It's really like to see what can be done and from which stakeholders. But sometimes because sometimes there's something that is really important, but there's an opportunity for another for a different action in the same time, and you will have to consider that. In the end, you'll have a project portfolio or action portfolio with the different things you want to do and the priorities. And it's important also to, understand this action planning process, the aspects of it, the action planning process. It depends a lot on who's there. So the diversity of actions that appears on this project portfolio and which are prioritized reflects the involvement of the actors. So sometimes you will have a portfolio, but it's not if you don't have the people participating, some enterprises, some companies that were not invited, or some stakeholders that were not considered, probably the actions that affect them most, or that are mostly interested for them, possibly won't appear if they are not on the negotiation table or the coordination table. The action planning is an opportunity to evaluate actions and the alignment with the strategy. It's an opportunity to evaluate the costs and benefits for each stakeholder. Again, the synergies and the trade-offs between the projects and the stakeholders. And it's also an opportunity, which is a really nice idea to reflect on, really, an opportunity to map spatially where are the projects. So again, what is already going on? How can we improve it? How can we support it? Do we need new projects? What would be the synergies and trade-offs that we would have to be attentive to? And finally, these plans, again, you will see a variety of formats. They can be broad, they can be very detailed, they can be presented in different formats. Most commonly, they're presented in a report, which have some tables and some maps possibly. And you should always communicate your plan. Otherwise, people won't know what you're working with. So the stakeholders on the landscape should know what's going on, and it should be flexible and adaptive. All right. So this topic of spatial putting on the map which are the plan or your actions, it's very interesting. You guys should consider when thinking about landscape actions to creating a map with the actions and locations proposed, all right, in the landscape. So it helps to show the location of the proposed activities and to identify the synergies on the space between the actions and landscape design. And finally, it makes the targets spatially explicit. People knows where things are being done. It indicates actions to restore, connect natural habitats, and enhance regenerative agriculture and environmental footprint stuff, and other land uses. Okay, so for example, if we have a landscape here, um, you could imagine. I've used already many times this photo. I think it's in the Amazon region, Amazonas Tapajós landscape. So you might have an area where you have indigenous people and you want to work with the project. You see that is necessary with them on the table. You need to work on indigenous livelihoods. In the same area, you see the potential to work with forest management. There's a lot of resources there that sustainably managed. It could be really connected to this livelihoods. In the same time, you see that there's a lot of pressure between the soil plantations, extensive, intensive, conventional, and you might see them as like stakeholders and think, well, maybe we need a project with them instead of to be conflicting with them. Let's work with a sustainable soy, possibly agroforestry soy. I don't know if that's possible. I really think it is. Um, but you have this possibility. Work with silvopastoral systems, and you can, working with them, think on forest connectivity to, connect this bigger areas of forest to have corridors to this big protected area here and here. All right. But you also want to have an opportunity where to sell them, an agroecological market, a place where this different communities can sell them. And you're in the river, you want to work with the fisheries. There's a lot of fishing there, but these fisheries are all the time impacted by, for example, gold, artisanal, small-scale gold mining upstream, which definitely impact the river with mercury. And you want to know how to deal with them. So you can work with a responsible mining process, if that's possible, right? And you can also work with education processes. Here in the urban area, you have a cultural center. And when you have all these different stakeholders and projects here working on this space, you can, and you can think already on other projects, and you can think of really what are the possible connections of them. And here I think it's what I say, like what I call the pulo do gato in Portuguese, is like it's a difference, because normally you have all these projects on landscapes, but they are most of the time disconnected. The person who's working with forest management sometimes don't even know or talk with the people who's working with livelihoods uh, just next to it. So the idea here is to find what are the connections, how to work together to find to achieve other landscape goal. Energies, where are the gaps, where are the trade-offs? And finally, here is the point, the moment where you already start to work, questioning yourself, what are the mechanisms that could finance each project? Okay, so what Juan and Seth talked about, the finance, the portfolio project for financing, it's exactly this. For each of these projects, you could have um, a small concept note where you can already start identifying, okay, this can be the possible donors for this, the mechanisms for financing. It will be a grant, it will be a loan, it will be, I don't know, the different types of investments. But this is all part of a investment portfolio, and which is the action plan, definitely. Okay, so I've talked a lot for now, and I would like to ask you guys if you have participated in any project action, and especially any territorial planning process before.
Max,
So what's
Max,
fair?
could I make a suggestion? It's 9:30 now. I suggest to go for a quick 5-minute break and then do the discussion when we get back. Would that be okay?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just because we've been talking for a while and I feel like we need to get up and move.
Yeah, okay, no, that's great. 5 minutes.
All right, so it's 9:30 for me. So whatever hour 35 for you guys, we will start again.
Okay, thank you.
Gonna resume. All right, how's everybody feeling? Let's turn our cameras back on. Did everyone have some time to stretch their legs, get the blood flowing? Thanks, Carolina. I see your thumbs up. All right, hey, Mariela. All right, Andres, thank you. All right, should we dive back in? Max, over to you.
Okay. So, well, I was alerted that I have to run. But maybe I would like to know if someone have any question at this point, and if you have participated in any territorial action planning that you'd like to share now briefly. Otherwise, I will keep on moving because I see that yeah, we still only have 15 minutes. So if anyone has any questions, please raise your hand and or write on the chat, and Patricia help me. Okay? So um okay. We would like to present to you a little bit of how the practice of landscape action planning. And is the process of like thinking what we're doing now to really doing an action planning. But then we come this with this action, how to create a landscape action plan. And really, it depends on what has been done before and the different contexts. There's not a specific methodology that will fit into you because of that. But there are some interesting uh, experiences and some frameworks that might be adapted to each occasion. So, for example, for some possible action plan, some iterative steps would be first having the goals, which some would say the SMART goals, which are specific, measurable, achievable, and time bound, is the first step. You need to have goals to set what are the actions for it. Um, and again, think of from the vision to this landscape strategy to the action planning. So for these goals, you need an action and steps. You have to think of allocating resources for these actions, prioritizing tasks, set deadlines and milestones, and finally, monitoring, evaluating, and learning. So this is more or less uh, the common structure of planning, and it's adaptable to action planning in a landscape. The only thing is that your context will be the landscape, and the different actions will be possibly the different projects on the landscape. And your goals here will definitely be those goals that you have uh, in the strategy plan, and we'll have specific goals for each project. Some interesting frameworks and key tools that you might find. One, for example, is this from the International Model Forest Network, which is a network I've talked about a lot about this. The Latin American Model Forest Network, which is part of the International Model Forest Network. They have a whole chapter on model forest work planning, remembering that model forests are landscapes that work with integrated management. So they say the first thing is to select the activities, what you want to work. You have to summarize the selected activities and projects. What do you put in this kind of summaries? You put the project name, the description, who are the partners, and this is what um, Charlotte mentioned. Who are those organizations that can participate in different ways on each project? What are the activities, the target beneficiaries? This really has to do on setting a concept, a note of each project, a summary for each selected project. Then you have to produce a work plan that is really doing this uh, 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 summary of how you're going to deal with each of these projects, how you're going to look, well, you have prioritized it, how you're going to approach each of them. This is a really important step. You need to approve your work plan. So are these set of projects prioritized? Are they really well, are they approved by all the stakeholders which are part of the landscape partnership? So it's really important. step, validating it. And there's this fifth step, which is monitoring. But I will move to a different worksheet tool. This one is from a project that EcoAg have worked in, I think it was in Kenya, um, a few years ago with this different organizations here. And you have a level of action plan here where you just like have planning phases for the partnerships, for the agreements and the needs and opportunities, so the shared understandings, and you have a planning moment on designing the interventions for action plan. So you will list here what are the different actions, the different projects, what you need on your landscape. In this column, you put the key roles, the roles of the different peoples who will be implementing this action, what is the timing, all right, and the different policy and people who manage the policies that are involved that can affect this project and the possible financing sources. Okay, so this in a very simple way, as I mentioned, you can have from the most detailed process to a simple process, a summarized process like this one. This one is pretty simple. You have one line for each action, but it's already a planning process with who, when, and how to fund, you know. And in this process of planning, it's definitely you probably have seen tools for planning, for thinking, reflecting. You have the famous tree of problems where the roots represent the causes of a problem. The trunk is the main problem, so the problem that you talk about, and the branches are the consequences. So you have something like this. Oh, your core problem that you want to prioritize and work with is the encroachment into protected areas. So what are the causes for this? Are the incompatible land uses, ethnicity and rivalry, rising populating pressure, you know? And all of this will lead to this kind of effects, the loss of revenues, human and wildlife conflicts, loss of biodiversities. So if you want to tackle this problem, you will probably need to work on these root causes with different projects or with a big project, or, you know, there's a whole strategy for it. You have the famous logical framework that you are lowering down goals into the level of activities, strategic goals, project goals, some outputs and activities. You will do narratives for each of them, but then you have indicators, means of verification, and the assumptions or the risks. And you will do this to plan strategically. So I'm not going to lose time on this, but well, it's in Spanish. Each donor have its own language for logical framework. USAID, European Union, World Bank will call in a different way the strategic goals or goals of long-term goals, objective goals, specific goals, activities. And for those who don't know, the logical framework, it's a really interesting process that makes you lower down big goals into specific goals in a process that is logical, that then you think, okay, what are the indicators for each of these goals to indicate to achieve the higher objective and so on. This is a very interesting later for those who haven't seen it before. We can share some nice references. And unfortunately, I won't have too much time to get into some of these action plans. Here they are presented as strategic plans, but as you can see, they are from 3 years. This is from Pichanaki on Peru. They have from 2015 to 2018. Here's in Chile. the Bosque Modelo Araucarias del Alto Mayeco, 3 years as well, just for you to have a really quick of less than 1 minute perspective. If you get into one of these strategic plans, for example, you will have the different parts of it. And let's see, if you come to the 44, page 44, let's see if I can get quickly. Well, this is the strategic plan. You will see that they start with the situation analysis. They will go through the development of the mission, the vision, and they will get into strategic priorities. It's in Spanish, I'm sorry, but so that you can see, you have priorities in citizen participation. They have a general strategic goal, some specific goals, and they will have what are their actions related to this strategic plan. So make a program on capacity for leaders and managers. Make an organizational diagnostic of the territory. If we're talking about local economic development, you'll have other actions like coordinate technical assistance to production, capacity building, induce networks to do research, and so on, for management of natural resource areas. And you have a whole part on financing, plan for financing all of these projects. So in this strategic action planning, they already have here again the strategic priorities in this column, and for each year how much they need. Here it's already a summary, but if you go lower, you have for each of their projects, they already have some level of how much they need for the project for the project of capacity building and the years. So it's a really interesting example, but all does it mean that all the action plans need to be like this? No, each one will work on their own levels. You have all other strategic planning. This one is 4 years. This one is only 2 years. So they are pretty much strategic action planning, short terms. And you have, for example, also restoration action planning processes, where you see this is from the Apurímac Abancay in Peru. They do a stakeholder mapping workshop, a spatial analysis workshop, interviews, visits. So this is all the process of context analysis. And then they do a workshop on the analysis of advancement, the gaps, and in Spanish, lluvia de ideas is a brainstorming of ideas for actions. They do a survey on what are the priorities, and they validate their priorities. And this, we are talking in an action plan, focus on the landscape, but for restoration. And in the end, you have a list of, again, with a category of different actions, categories, the actions like campaigns for sensibilization of citizen, promotion of governance spaces, and here that you have the description of each of them. And not only for this category, you have many other categories. This one is for governance, but you will have some that has to do with research, other that has to do with really technical work on field, on restoration. And finally, a different one, again, this
Max.
is the process.
Max,
Yeah,
sorry.
I will finish.
All right, yeah, just to let you know, it's 9:50, 9:51.
Yeah, and this one is for the context of also Peru, Rio, the Uyabamba Bise River, that also they planned and have their strategic objectives, action lines, strategic actions, the key stakeholders for each of these actions, and the indicators, and so on. We have other examples for it. So just to close up this, we have last example of tool. We in the 1000 Landscapes and EcoAg, we have the Integrated Landscape Finance Framework, which is which follows up really pretty much the same what we've seen: a vision, a strategy, an action plan. What are the needs for financing these plans, and finding these finance mechanisms, and finally mobilizing finance. So if you take up this two things here, the financing needs, if you reflect on the document I've just shown, they saw the finance needs. Possibly there could be a next column with the different mechanisms necessary for or that could fit for them and for each of these needs. Okay. And as an example of the finance landscape finance assessment tool of 1000 Landscape, the first step is to understand what is the landscape partnership status right now of governance, the cost structures, and history. So, and this tool from the 1000 Landscapes for 1 billion people, you first assess the landscape partnership, then the investment portfolio. Okay, so you need to know, after understanding the partnership, what are the priority projects and actions, and finally understand what are the possible mechanisms that exist and are relevant for this portfolio. All right, and remembering these sources can come from local, as we've been discussing, from people who are on the landscape working there, which would be the best scenario, but also international sources, donors, all the projects that are paid from international sources. So yeah, a little bit of rush in this last minutes, but we would definitely want to have more discussion now. If you have any questions before we go to our breakout groups that we want to share some ideas. Any questions? I see Percy wrote a message here. I have been working.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Hi, good
Yes,
morning.
welcome.
I have a question, Max. In these action plans that you show us, there is also the cost of the activities, because the last session, in the finance session, we were discussing about how much money do we need to achieve that goal, or that what we said in the action plan. So if in that planning we should contemplate the cost of the actions, or it is okay only to have the simple planning that you show us about USAID and all that. It was like a tiny thing.
Well, actually, the logical framework that I've shown you, they're even mostly used on for planning the project itself, the designing of the project. But what you said about the costs, again, I think it will be it can vary a lot, the level of detail that you want to go on. But if you want to work with financing, definitely it's really important to have at least an idea of the costs of each action or each project. And you don't have to detail then the single tasks within each project, but at least, as I've presented here in this case, I'm not sharing my screen again, but in this plan from Chile, this strategic plan, they put the costs for each project more or less. So you can use this to have an idea. Okay, this strategic goal if I do all these projects, this is the cost. You can use it to present to a donor and really talk in a more practical way with them. What Juan and Seth mentioned, which is key and is totally related to action planning, the financing, is that you to talk with the donors and think on mechanisms, you need to be practical in the way that you need to show, look, this is what I really need to do in the landscape. They are planned because of this. They are connected with different projects, but I have all these options of projects where you can support, and this is the cost for each of them. Okay, you want to work with water, so I have a project with water, and this is the cost. You're interested on agriculture, so here it is, and so on, you know. So yeah, basically, this is more or less what I would say. It's important to have at least an overview of the costs of each of these actions.
Great, thank you.
Well, Patricia, let's jump into the breakout groups. Yeah, I'm sorry. So I'm going to share my screen again so that you just can see.
While Max is opening his, could I ask who is HP? Because I'm not sure which room to assign you to. Do you want to go to an English speaking room, Spanish speaking room? HP?
I'm afraid HP, maybe that one might be me, Jalou. You take me to English speaking.
Thank you, Jalu.
Oh,
No, it's not
yeah.
you. It's someone that's just HP.
Oh, okay.
All right, I'm gonna put you into the one of the Spanish speaking rooms. If anyone wants to change, just let me know. Go ahead, Max.
So yeah, basically the idea is just it's a brainstorming moment just to think on how would it be on the landscapes that you work with. So we've talked about vision, we've talked about stuff, but what could be the different actions that you visualize in the landscapes you work with? I know you work with agriculture a lot, but what would be other things that you've seen? Okay, this is related. Uh, in a previous session that we had with a different group that works with mining, it was very interesting because they saw the different connections between, for example, the mining they talk a lot about gold with gender violence and people leaving schools to work on mining. But just because they started to think like, okay, mining is related to other projects that sometimes we are not connecting them. So I would give you at this point 15 minutes in each group to just like discuss a little bit what are the actions that you visualize on your different landscapes and who could be some of the groups, stakeholders that could implement each of these actions and what could be some policy and financing. I know the time is short, but it's just to discuss a little bit of this. Um, um, is that okay, Patricia?
Yeah, that sounds fine. I'll copy and paste these questions into the chat box so people can refer to them while they're speaking. And then Max, how long do they have them?
Let's give them 15 minutes just to talk a little bit about it, and then we can move into closing discussion.
All right, so I'm going to open the breakout groups. If anybody wants to change groups, you can just click leave and you'll come back to the main room and I'll reassign you, okay? All right, and I've posted the questions into the chat box. Have fun. Bye.
Thanks, Patricia.
Wish. Okay. Hi, Anne. I see you wanted to be added to an English group. I just saw your message. Can you hear me? I just moved you to the English group. Anne, if you can hear me.
Yes, thank you so much, Patricia. Thank you.
You're welcome. E aí, Max, tudo bem?
Tudo
Very good, very good. Oh, that's great. All right. Well, let's hear about how it went then. Who wants to, should we do a short round of reporting back? Just a couple, 2 minutes per group?
Yeah, that would be great. So the idea is that you guys can mention a little bit how was this brainstorming. I imagine that some ideas came up, some reflections. Let's start with group one. Which language is group one? Patricia. Spanish or English or French? Let's hear the French colleagues.
No, we didn't do French. We did English one, Spanish. Let's do English first.
Okay. If there is anybody from the English group that would like to report, how was the discussion? Some main takeaways, ideas? That would be great.
Was good. I can start, and maybe Jalu and Napo and Mafi and Bernadette can add. So we were talking about the main activities. So we start thinking about training or to create or to reinforce awareness. But also we talk about maybe this is the internal part. We were thinking about continue the stakeholder mapping, or to define key activities to strengthen the internal management, maybe communication or the organization of the activities. So someone in the group said something about activities for stakeholder engagement. So the external part, but also what is happening, how can we strengthen the internal management. And about the roles, we were talking about how to create or how to reinforce leadership, but also to define a facilitator, could be external or internal advisor, if we are thinking about public policies, for example, someone who can read, who knows, who can analyze the context and who knows about policies. And the last part was about finance strategist, to define that role, finance strategist. Maybe Napo or Jalu, please, from the group, can add something. I'm sure that I forget many things.
Napoleon had a point when we were, okay.
No, you did great, Mariela. Thank you, Yalu. Actually, no, just when we were talking about financing, and just that an advisor is also important in that topic. Just that, but the rest is perfect. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. Max, should we move on to the next group?
Thank you so much, Mariela and the colleagues. It's interesting. Just, yeah, later we can do a round of ideas.
So Spanish group one.
I don't remember what is the main
number.
Yeah.
You go, you guys go.
Can be you. Number you.
Okay, me, Vanessa.
Okay.
So, in our group, we had colleagues from Ecuador and Peru, so we choose the case of Peru, Pichanaki case. Mariela told something about that case at the beginning in this session. And regarding the first question about 3 or 5 key actions, we choose as a first action mapping key actors in the area. And for the mapping, we need prior to know what would be the intent the intention of this platform, because key actors on what, for what. For instance, if we are thinking in a multi-stakeholder platform or for promote food systems, or maybe more focused in production of cocoa or coffee. So a second step, we defined this step as a diagnosis of landscape challenges, and we mean organizing activities as workshops or seminars, inviting key actors that have the information, studies, or diagnosis that they can share with the different actors involved in the platform, because in that way we can know what information do we have at the moment. Also, we can identify in a joint way what are maybe the challenges regarding the landscape we need to prioritize. And that this practice was applied in Nicaragua in the Maslago platform, and it was a successful practice for them. And then as a third step, we identify the construction of the common objective, shared mission and vision. Also, regarding the second question about the key roles, who is in charge of implementing an action, we think should be the core group. And also we think that core group should prioritize activities, because maybe they can't be able to implementing all the activities. Also about implementing a policy, we think the entire platform, the whole platform with the presence of public institutions should do that. Regarding financing, we think international cooperation, private sector specifically that is looking to improve the level or quality of production, or maybe the quality of living of producers. I think maybe if I miss something, Ricardo, or Theo, or Andres can add some idea.
Maybe we can jump to the third group. We have still a few minutes, and like to hear the last one. Thank you so much, Vanessa. Thank you so much.
Okay, group number 2, Spanish. We were applying this analysis in Yohoa Lake in Honduras, in Central America. And the way we were discussing is that related with the key actions that the lake is focusing on is in contamination. It is because sectors like agriculture and tourism, for example, are affecting the lake with the activities. Other key actions that are focusing is to develop marketing for the lake, because it is important to develop strategies to let people that to protect the lake is important. And the other action is it is important to integrate actors to this for the protections of the lake. And regarding the key roles, we identified municipalities, for example, related to implement policies that are integrated on the action plan. financing, for example, USAID is an important donor for the projects that are developed in the region, and organizations like Amoprolago, they are related directly in the implementation of the action plan, and they're looking for different resources for the lake. That is the way we analyze and apply the questions.
Thank you so much, Percy, as well. Well, we are at 8:30 here in Costa Rica, and just in time. I would like just to wrap up this quick, very interesting discussion. I really wanted to have more time, and I'm sorry for some lack of time for that. But thanks for all the ideas, and something that came up to me as a reflection at this point is how difficult and how almost impossible it is to make an action plan without going through the previous steps. So it was interesting to see that most of you mentioned things that would that that are like the base of an action plan. So stakeholder mapping, the vision and plan, the visioning. So it's interesting to see how we can how we need these previous steps to do the action planning, and before we can really think on actions, specific actions. You need to know the context. You need to do the second group talked about understanding what are the landscape challenges. That's what I mentioned, like what the context analysis. So to bring people together actions, you need that everyone is aligned on these things, understand the landscape together, and also have the same share a vision, and you know who are the stakeholders who are there and can contribute both in implementing and financing. But well, thank you so much for that. I will get back to Patricia and share my screen on the last slide so that we can move forward. So thank you very much. I hope we can keep on with these discussions in the next meeting, possibly, or in the future. Thank you very much. Patricia, I'll hand it to you.
Thanks so much, Max. Well, we're already over time, so I'll keep it short. Just to say, this was the last session that we had on specific theory or content development, looking at case studies. Next week, sorry, not next week, on Thursday, just in a couple of days, we have our last